the time I knew what happiness was. Let the memory live again. Every street lamp seems to beat.
If y'all are ready, then we're going to start our next presentation. Hi, I'm Jenny Funk with the Alzheimer's Association, and it is my privilege to introduce the next speaker for the day. However, I need to do some thanking on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association. So will Pauline and Rita and all of the Alzheimer's committee here in Victoria and the surrounding areas, please stand up so we can all thank you for all of the hard work and time and energy and love and everything that this entire committee has done to bring this educational symposium to you today. So we really can't thank you enough. I also want to say wholeheartedly thank you to all of the companies who have supported today. Without a doubt, we are all touched by this disease in some way or another, and we know how devastating it is. The good thing about a day like today is that hopefully by the end of this, you will be stuffed with resources, information. So please, please stop by every table that's in this room. And even if you think you know all about them, grab what's on the table, grab whatever you can from all of us, so that when you need help, you know that you're no longer alone in this journey. There's a lot of resources in this room, and it's really important that you all share them as you go out. So thank you. And I want to thank all of the rest of you for attending and spending your day here to learn more about how to care for people with this disease. So just can't thank this community enough for all of your support and how much information you want to have as you take care of people. It is my privilege to introduce our next speaker. The Alzheimer's Association has partnered with this group. This is not our program, but I can say as being trained as a master trainer that the next presentation and the information about the community stress busting program is phenomenal. It's one of those things where I guarantee people start out saying, oh, I can't make a commitment to that kind of long educational support system. But by the time, I think I've done about 10 different groups now, by the time it's done, people who go through the stress busting program do not want it to end. We have quite a few groups who continue to meet, even though it is a 9-week, and I'll let Dr. Minor-Williams tell you all about it, but I just really want to tell you that it is a phenomenal support for caregivers. So let me introduce, she is instrumental in founding the Community Stress Busting Program for family caregivers in all of its various stages of development over the last 9+ years. Dr. Denise Minor-Williams is a palliative care nurse and a research assistant professor of nursing at the University of Texas Health Science Center, San Antonio, as well as a geriatrics researcher with the Texas Veterans Healthcare, GECs. And she is also a retired Army nurse. So please welcome Dr. Denise Minor-Williams.
When I say I'm really glad to be here this morning, you can take me literally because I got in last night from a very long weekend in New York City. 2 days later, I did make it back. We were visiting our son who's in school up at West Point. So I am very glad to be here this morning. I missed the very beginning, and I would like to know, are most of the people here providers, or do we have caring for people with Alzheimer's? Okay. Do we have family caregivers themselves, family members taking care of people? Okay, because even within providers, family caregivers are everywhere.
It's so great. I'm so grateful that I know all these people because we're in the beginning stages and it helps. They're all such a resource.
Oh, absolutely.
Kim can't hear me. She was asking about family members dealing with Alzheimer's, and as someone going through it right now, as I'm getting emotional, it just helps having all you guys, not only as my friends, but as a resource.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can't have too many resources with this. So as Jenny mentioned, I will tell you about a program called the StressBusting program, which is for family caregivers. But in doing this, I want to point out how you can help family caregivers. I mean, to take some of this information, even if you can't join with the program, to take some of this information and work with family caregivers. We know about Alzheimer's disease, right? You know, and the prevalence of it and everything that's going on with that. These are just some of the numbers in Texas of how the numbers of people afflicted with Alzheimer's are increasing. But I'm here to talk about the other half of Alzheimer's disease, and that is the family members who are caring for the person. The family caregivers are phenomenal. I mean, group of people. The number of caregivers is increasing, obviously, as we have more people with Alzheimer's disease. We've got over 1.3 million caregivers, Alzheimer's family caregivers in Texas right now. What they provide to the community and to the health care system, I mean, these numbers don't even begin to describe. We're talking in the millions and billions of dollars and hours of what they provide. You know, most of, over 80% of long-term or elderly care is done in the home. It's not done in institutions. It's within the families. And it's the health and the well-being of the families that, family members that allows that to happen. We can look at the costs of caregiving. It's not something that, we all grow up thinking that that's what we're going to do when we get older, what we want to be when we grow up. How many people want to be a caregiver for a loved one with Alzheimer's? It's not on our radar screen for the most part. It's just something that happens. And we know that this can be very difficult for the family members. They perform an incredibly valuable service, but it's at tremendous personal costs. Emotional costs, financial, physical, social costs. Emotionally, a lot of it is involved with the family relationships. That they can change quite a bit when someone in the family develops dementia or any type of chronic disease, but especially with dementia. There are all sorts of stories of families coming together and jumping in and really helping each other, but there are also the other stories where family members disappear because they can't deal with it. In palliative care, we've got the DDD syndrome, we call it, the darn daughter from Dallas, that swoops in, every other month, tells mom what she's doing wrong or what she needs to be doing in taking care of dad, and then runs off to Dallas and leaves mom, holding the bag. And unfortunately, that's not an uncommon occurrence. There can be a lot of disagreements about how to do the care. When do we place them? Where, how, where? Just lots and lots of questions of, are we doing it right? There's no book out there on how to care for someone with dementia. It's very challenging. The physical tolls are also enormous. We know that as the disease progresses, the caregiver is going to get less and less adequate sleep. That the eating habits become very poor, and the two of those result in a great deal of fatigue. There's a lack of inattention to grooming after a while, and one of our funny stories with the program that we have is we always say we would, and sometimes we do, take before and after pictures. of when they first come into the program and we start teaching them how to take care of themselves. And then at the end of the 9 weeks, sometimes it's really, really remarkable. But there is a lack of even personal grooming and certainly of taking care of their own health issues. Sometimes there's a resort to the use of alcohol and drugs and smoking to cope with all the stressors associated with caregiving. We know that caregivers have an increased risk for heart problems and for stroke, for cognitive impairment themselves. That we tend to relate to the stresses involved with the caregiving. And we know that there is a higher mortality rate among caregivers of persons with dementia than their non-caregiving peers. So it can be quite, obviously, quite a personal challenge. Socially, the life begins to revolve around the person with dementia. And it makes it difficult to interact with other people because a lot of people don't know what to do or say, or they start feeling uncomfortable around someone with dementia, with some of the bizarre behaviors that can start arising. The caregivers will often feel a sense of isolation, with an embarrassment with the symptoms, or just not being able to get up. And frequently they'll tell us about losing a sense of self. That it's all about her now. She's much more in need of care than I am, and so they lose who they are as individuals. Financially, we know that the impact of any chronic disease can take, especially as many elders don't have the long-term care insurance, and hopefully more and more people are. How many people here do have long-term care insurance right now? See, it's still a real minority of people here. We have a hand waver in the back. She's very happy about that. But this is important. It can really impact the families because all these the financial responsibilities for the care of the person are picked up by the family, and hopefully it's divided among the different family caregivers. We know that. We can talk about all these physical and emotional and financial and social costs of caregiving, but the caregivers themselves will probably talk about just simple burnout. That's what it can feel like after a while, when there's this consistent, excessive, and prolonged stress that there doesn't seem to be any relief from, that they just start heading into this type of burnout where you're just unable to cope with all the increasing demands that are placed upon you. And it can get pretty scary, pretty frustrating, definitely, and sometimes pretty scary. So this morning, that was the introduction. This morning then, I would like to talk to you about the Community Stress Busting Program for Family Caregivers. And within that, to help you to identify how to support family caregivers when you come in contact with them and when you meet up with them. This program started back in 1996. Dr. Sharon Lewis started working with caregivers on a one-to-one basis, teaching them simple breathing and relaxation when she was going through an immunology postdoctoral fellowship. And she wanted to look at the impact of the relaxation on the immune system and of a very stressed out group. And she gravitated towards family caregivers and decided on them and started working with them. But so she started with some research and had some very positive results. But the feedback that she was getting from the caregivers that she was working for is they wanted a little bit more than just this one-on-one. And that led to the development of a program, a full program as opposed to the individual care. And what we have now is this multi-component holistic program that we provide in a small support group setting. We meet once a week for an hour and a half for 9 weeks. And it's only up to 8 caregivers, facilitated by two trained facilitators. We call it a multi-component program because we provide support and education, problem-solving techniques, and teach them how to manage stress and how to relax. Sometimes it's easier when I'm doing the training for, Jenny likes this part, is when I'm doing the training for people on how to do this, it's almost easier to tell you what it's not. It's not a class, it's not a support group, it's not a therapy session, but we take elements of all of those. And that's why it's the skill of the facilitators in managing this group of what seems like a very small number of up to 8 people, but can be very intense when we're working with them for 9 weeks to cover all these different areas. I call it a holistic program because we look at, sometimes I call it a mind-bending program, because we help people to look at thinking very differently about life and about stress and how to approach things. So we have a cognitive element of it. We look at the emotional point of it, and yeah, we talk about anger management. We have a spiritual aspect of it, and then a very physical aspect of it, of teaching us how to physically relax and to manage our stress. This is the book that we've developed. It's about a 200-page handbook. And we developed some DVDs to go along with the program. And the one is, one of them is the relaxation strategies that we teach during the sessions, that they can take the DVD home and to use that as an extra resource for them. So I thought I'd go through the different sessions of things that we covered. In the first week, actually the didactic material that we have is only in 8 sessions. But because we're in the support group setting and we're really eliciting the support of the caregivers together, we added an extra session on, because caregivers need to tell their stories. It's about story. It's about lives. It's about who these people are. And in this very beginning of introducing the program and introducing to each other's, it's very interesting of trying to get them to talk about themselves rather than their loved one. And we need to hear a little bit where the loved one is so we can get an understanding. But it's always a refocusing, well, what about you? How are you doing? What's going on with you? And for many of these caregivers, this might be the first time that anybody's asking them these questions, because it's always about the person that they're caring for, and that's where their focus is. And this program is solely on the focus of the caregiver and getting that person to take care of herself or himself. The second session we get together, we talk about the general concepts of stress and how the caregiving can produce negative effects on one's health. And we encourage this to be very self-oriented. How many of you, even hopefully not today, go to seminars or symposiums and learn some really interesting information, and sort of excited about it while you're there, and then you go home and you put the notes on your desk or on a shelf, and then you go about your merry life, and never the twain shall meet, or maybe just one little couple little things. Well, we don't want that to happen. So what we do is we get them very, very involved in the material. The handbook is structured so that the material that is presented has a lot of exercises that they fill in themselves. So we ask that we talk about stress and the physical manifestations of stress. But how do you manifest stress? I feel it in my shoulders. I know when my shoulders are up around my ears that I'm getting stressed out. So that's a symbol. How else do people feel stress? Irritable. Okay. What else?
Gastric symptoms.
Ah, the stomach. Yeah, that's a good one to let us know. When you're getting stressed out, you can feel it in your stomach. And you become forgetful yourself, absolutely. So it's a matter then of taking this material and bringing it to them so that the caregiver understands what this means to me. You know, what does stress mean to me? So we start about that very early on, and we look at the effects of stress on the mind and the body and the spirit. And then we looked at, again, we look at some of the stressors related to the caregiver, and I sort of teasingly tell them it's not to get you, feeling down on yourself about all these things that can make you stressful, but it's to get you to recognize what's going on. That, wow, there really are a lot of things in your life right now that are that can cause stress. And it's important to be aware of that, because you can't address it until you're aware of it. And a lot of these things we just sort of keep under the subconscious a little bit, or, oh yeah, we know they're there, but we don't talk about them. But here it's awareness. It's important to be aware of the stress, of the stresses you're undergoing. And then we talk about a relaxing environment. Now, just as an example, y'all probably have heard of the fight or flight stress response before, right? Pretty, it's the basic stress response that when something happens, our muscles tense up and we get ready to either run away from it or to go fight and take care of it. Did you know that there's a relaxation response? Are you aware of this? The exact opposite. And let me tell you, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, think of this situation. You're driving down the road, got a lot of things on your mind, and all of a sudden, somebody darts out in front of your car. You've got to slam on the brakes, and they're screeching to a halt. And what happens? You're all tensed up. You're breathing, everything, and then the person just walks away, and what happens to you? You sort of, oh my gosh. That's the relaxation response, okay? And it's important to know that, because you realize that was your body had those physical changes because of something that you had to do. You had to slam on your brakes and use all your faculties to avoid hitting this person with your car. And then it was over, and then you could relax. And your body started going back to normal, to maintaining a homeostasis, right? So you're stabilizing again. But the thing is, when you're under constant daily stress, all the time, the Alzheimer's never goes away. They can't remember, and sometimes they remember and sometimes they don't, and that's even more confusing than if they don't remember at all. It's the up and down, and it doesn't stop. And you don't go into the relaxation response. So we have to teach people how to purposefully elicit the relaxation response so that they can let go of those stressors and their body can go back to normal again, at least for a little while. Okay? So that's an important part of that. This is sort of what life is like for many of us, right? In our very busy lives, we've got a choice between stressed out and sleep deprived, and which way are you going to go? What I think is interesting about this picture is that you'll see in the distance, you've got the sign "Living for Weekends and Holidays," and many of us in our regular lives, that's what we do. But guess what? Caregivers don't have weekends and holidays. They don't even have that to look forward to. So it's only, it might seem as if these are only the only two choices that they have, is the stressed out and sleep deprived. We spent a session on looking at grief, loss, and depression, and the losses related to Alzheimer's. We tend to think of loss simply as the ultimate loss of death, but there are many multiple small losses we know going on, and it's important to recognize, again, losses need to be grieved, or they just sort of fester. And you can't grieve a loss if you don't recognize it. And addressing this ongoing grief that's going on is something that we talk about. This can be a very difficult session for our caregivers. Sometimes they just walk out and they just say, I didn't realize I had all these losses. The loss of dreams, the loss of plans, a lot of different things that they're just thinking about the day-to-day issues. And it's important that we think about all of the losses going on. Caregivers tend to have higher rates of depression than their non-caregiving peers. And so we talk about depression and depressive symptoms, even if you don't have a full diagnosed depression, but all of us experience depressive symptoms and depression symptoms at some point, and how to deal with that and what to do about them. Because there are a lot of things that we can do in our own self-care before running out and, before going out to get medication. So we talk about that, although we talk about the benefits of getting help and counseling and medication when it's needed too. We look at coping techniques, and we do that in the context of changing family relationships. So again, we talk about stories, and we hear how changes are taking place in each of their lives. And then we talk about different ways of coping and different coping strategies and apply them to the changing relationships. And so it becomes more than simply a matter of learning a didactic skill, but immediately putting it to use. And okay, now I know, this is self-focused coping and situation-focused coping, and now I know how to use this in what situation. So it becomes much more alive and real for them. Humor is one of our very strong points of coping mechanisms. And a lot of our group sessions, we do a lot of laughing. I don't know, do you find that too, Jenny? We enjoy each other, and the laughing itself relieves stress, and the humor is very helpful. We've only got one session out of all 9 of them that cover actually Alzheimer's disease itself, because obviously the symptoms are stressors. And as I've said, this isn't a class, so what we do is we have the caregivers identify the challenging behaviors that they're dealing with. And then we go through it and discuss those and put them in the context of the disease process itself. So again, we give them resources, but it's very geared towards what their own lives. Positive thinking is a great chapter that and this is where I talked about sort of being a mind-bending program. You can just learn to look at things differently. And positive thinking can really help you reframe your whole role. We've got some fun exercises with that to help people identify how they think about a situation. So it's what we call metacognition. It's thinking about how we think, and figuring out how we can reframe things to look at it in a way that can make it more manageable. Taking care of yourself, we have one chapter on, I call it all the things Mom told us how to do when we were little, but we tend to ignore now because we're caregivers. So we look at exercise and nutrition and the value of sleep, and we try to put it in the context of why it's important. Not so much, it's not a nutrition class, but why it's important. The most interesting one is the section on hobbies. And you can imagine when we bring hobbies up to caregivers who often don't seem to have 10 minutes to themselves, we start to lose credibility fast. It's like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding. You think I'm going to develop a hobby while I'm a caregiver? But then we talk about this. And we talk about the importance of hobbies and why this is the best time to still be looking at something that that is enjoyable to you, and how important this is for you as a caregiver to develop as a person, to continue to develop yourself. And we encourage them to look at things that they've done before and things that they want to do, and to open up the possibility of doing this to help themselves grow as they are caregivers. Very, very important. The underlying principle that we have to this whole thing is you can't always choose your destiny in life. But what you can do is choose how to cope with it, and how to deal with it, how to look at it. And this is what it all comes down to choice. A very, very important concept that we continually work with the caregivers. And then at the end, we put them all together and we help them with some goal setting and again, with making choices. With each session, we do a relaxation technique. And the first and most important one is breathing. Most people will say, gee, I've been doing it for quite a while. You know, what else do I need to know? But actually, there are different ways of breathing, and there is a relaxation breathing technique that, and it's called relaxation breathing because when you do this properly, that it does help to slow your body down, and it helps to bring about that relaxation response that I told you, about a little earlier. And this relaxation breathing, it's interesting when you're doing this breathing properly, that when you exhale, did you know that your heart rate changes when you inhale and when you exhale? And when you exhale, your heart rate slows down. And your body, that's when the minute portions of healing take place in the exhalation. The breathing is extremely important. And learning how to breathe properly can help you to slow down and elicit that relaxation response. It's a wonderful thing to do. It's real portable. People don't know you're doing it. It's very sneaky. But a wonderful technique. We talk about meditation. That's easy to explain about, but not so easy to do. It's focusing with your mind and developing this sense of thoughtless awareness. And what that does with meditation techniques is it actually changes your brain waves. We call it a meditation technique as opposed to real meditation, because meditation is usually associated with a very spiritual practice. But we know that meditation does produce physical relaxation, so we teach them how to use that techniques to assist with the physical relaxation. Imagery is a wonderful technique of using your mind and using your imagination, and how this can affect your body. Sharon Lewis, I told you, was the original author of this program, and she's a real master at this. And she was going in for some heavy dental work one time, and they offered to, the dentist offered to give her some anesthesia, and she said, "Oh no, that's okay." Dentist is over there. Okay. And the procedure took several hours, and he was amazed at the end of it, and he said, "What did you do?" And she said, "I went skiing." Took a vacation in her mind. Amazing. This is a very, very profound technique for relaxing. Not all of us are that good at it, though. We can try. Journaling is a great relaxation technique, or stress-reducing technique. There is a study out of the University of Texas in Austin that produced some results saying that journaling for 15 minutes 3 times a week can reduce stress levels. Interesting, huh? And especially if you are journaling about something positive or something that you're grateful for, that this can, so that could be a take home for all of you here. Get out a little book, and journaling can be any way, all different ways of doing it. What we do is ask the caregivers to talk about positive aspects of caregiving, and we just give it at the last 15 minutes of each session. We say for our techniques so that they can not only just hear about them, but to experience them. So they've got a page, and they just sit down journaling, and it's really fun to see people start engaging in it right away. Art. We use art as a technique for relaxation. So what does art have to do with relaxation or stress management? Well, we know that art allows people to non-verbally express and communicate our thoughts. And this is one of those techniques that people go, oh, I don't do art, I don't draw, and they draw back right away. But you don't have to be an artist to do this. And this is one of the most fun techniques for me is when we do this is in our handbook, we've got a picture of a butterfly, and we give them crayons and say, go to it. And it is so awesome to see this group of adults needing a certain color, and you've got to find the right color, because there's something about art and something about this that just really reaches inside of us. And when we do this, how people will just start chatting, and there's no eye contact, and they're looking at some of them staying right in the lines, and others going all over everywhere because there's no grade on these things, and how this really elicits a sense of relaxation and ease. I see it as much of ease. The picture that we have up here is actually something that one of the caregivers developed or rediscovered her artistic talents, and she drew this. This is a self-portrait. What can you see in this picture?
She's religious.
Keeping her head above water.
She's religious.
She's religious, so that's sort of maybe keeping her afloat. Different faces. So she has her smiley face that she shows the world. So you can see how her, this using art just brought this out, and she's able to share this with people. So you never know what can happen when we get into that. We talk about massage. How many of you have had massages before?
How many of you need one right now?
Massage is great. Really glad to see it. We've got to, once you can get over, stigmas. My husband is one. You wouldn't get him in for a massage for anything. But it's amazing what that can do just to make you feel better. And what we do with this is we do hand massages. And we show them how to do hand massages, and we do them all on each other at the group. And it's a dual purpose with this, because massaging the hand of someone with dementia can prevent them from getting very agitated, as long as you don't do it when they're in full-blown agitation. But if you can start seeing when they start getting antsy and start doing a hand massage, that it can really calm them down, as well as the person providing the massage. I had a real fascinating experience with massage one time. I was doing a hospice visit, and I was with another nurse with this one particular visit, and it was for a woman with Alzheimer's who hadn't been speaking for quite a while. And so the other nurse was talking with the daughter and getting, situated her, talking with her about what was going on. And I sat down with the elderly woman, and her hands were like this. I mean, it hurt me to look at how tensed up her hands were. And I sort of took one of her hands and said, my son really likes it when I massage his hand. Is it okay if I massage your hand or rub your hand for a little while? And she just sort of looked at me and there was no response. So I was working on it, and we weren't talking or anything, but I was just doing the massage techniques for hand. And she started loosening up a little bit, and then she started talking. And her daughter's head just sort of twisted around like she's talking, and I mean talking. And she started telling me stories, and then the most fascinating thing happened was she reverted to her primary language of Spanish, and I am not bilingual, but I could understand everything she was saying. It was the most amazing experience, as I just sat there rubbing her hand and listening to her tell me about her life. And I never got her hand fully relaxed, but the smile on her face was enough. The smile on her daughter's face was awesome. So that's just sort of an interesting technique that you can keep in mind too. Using music, I think most of us recognize the value of music and how it can either calm us or energize us. And do you know what the difference is? Or how to choose? We look at different genres of music and whether we like them, but actually a lot of it has to do with the tempo of the music. If the tempo, which makes sense, if the tempo is greater than your heart rate, it's going to get you going and moving. And if the tempo is slower than your heart rate, it's going to be calming and relaxing. So then, it's just a practice of we give them 1 minute little blips of different types of music, and they can sort of get the feel of the difference that the different types of music can, the changes that it makes on your body. And how they can use it. A real fun one is aromatherapy, where we look at the uses of aroma and aromatherapy. And, there was a time in my life when I thought this sort of woo-woo stuff. Really? Okay, so it smells good. But there really are some physiological benefits of aromatherapy when it's used with real essential oils. And there are a lot of different stories of, we're finding more research about it. They're in Europe during the Great Flu epidemic. When was it? About the 1917 or the early 1900s, where the people were just dying by the hundreds and thousands from this flu epidemic. They realized that the people who worked in the perfume factories had a much lower rate of contracting the flu than the rest of the population at large. Which is just one indicator of how essential oils can be beneficial to our bodies. I've heard that in Japan, it's one of the factories, they pipe in peppermint in the air system because it makes you more productive. Okay. But aromatherapy can be really fun with some of the things that we go on how it does affect the body and the mind and the spirit. So this was a research study, okay, and we gathered results from it. We look at the caregivers answer questionnaires before the program starts, at the end of the program, and then initially we were doing it 2 months after, 4 months after, and 6 months after. Very initially, we were doing blood draws to look at the immune status and using biofeedback techniques too, but with initial data coming in, we decreased the amount of testing. So now we're just having them do the questionnaires. And we know that this program does cause decreases in depression and anger and hostility and the sense of caregiver burden. So it's the perception of what they're doing, as well as improvements in quality of life and in sense of control. So it's been very well documented and beneficial for the participants in it. But it's the stories that really tell it. This one woman told us that with the descent into my husband's Alzheimer's, I thought my life had ended. that I'd be an empty shell forever. The StressBusting program gave me a safety net when I needed it most. It gave me the impetus to live life more richly. The program is growing, going different directions. I've got a program now that I started in 2010 working with the family caregivers of the Wounded Warriors in San Antonio at the Military Medical Center and at the VA using very similar handbook, but again, we've changed the context of it so that it reaches out to their life stories. And we're seeing similar results with these family caregivers with this program too. In 2010, it became the community StressBusting program where before we had just kept it, we had it in San Antonio and we're gathering the data on the initial data on caregivers. And with the community program, we have been training, Sharon and I have been training other people to facilitate the program, and it's been spreading throughout all of Texas. Jenny mentioned that she's a master trainer for that. It's funded by the Administration on Aging. It's been a collaborative effort. Sharon and I are out at the Health Science Center, UT Health Science Center in San Antonio. We worked with the WellMed Foundation and Alzheimer's Association, different areas on aging, and the VA and DADS to bring about this program. And as we're doing that, you know, it made me, when we're trying to teach other people how to do this very intensive program, we started by saying you have to do everything exactly like we did it. But that just doesn't work. And so we had to think about it, and I boiled it down and felt that what makes this program successful in causing those decreases in depression and, you know, the results that I showed before boiled down to three things. The skill of the facilitators and training them, the nurturing of the caregivers during the sessions, and the content of the materials, a lot of which I've shared with you. So we've completed 50 different groups with 249, this is as of September, so it's more than this now. Mostly females, not surprising. Interestingly, half and half with spouses and adult children. Pretty even with Hispanics and non-Hispanics. And the results from this are a decrease in stress levels. You'll notice that the little star indicates that these are statistically significant, going from the baseline at the very beginning to the end of the intervention. Depression, again, goes down. Caregiver burden goes down. This is a comparison of the children and the spouses. You'll see that the children have higher stress levels overall than the spouses do. Makes sense. We call them the sandwich generation. So they're taking care of mom and being soccer mom or soccer dad, you know, and doing both and working all at once. So they have higher levels. They have decreases in levels, but they don't seem to get down as low as the spouses do. It's a recognized intervention by the Administration on Aging and the National Council on Aging. We're part of the Texas State Plan on Alzheimer's disease. This is one of the indicators that we have. This is the web links. You know, you don't have handouts today because that was supposed to have been done yesterday and the day before when I was playing with Sandy. But you can go on the DAD's website and find out information about this. These are some more stories from the caregivers. I was so overwhelmed and unable to cope that I truly felt I was swimming against a strong current with no hope of reaching my destination. This woman did real well with the journaling part, by the way. With StressBusters, I felt I had been tossed a life preserver and could see a glimmer of hope on the horizon. The current where I swim still gets rough sometimes, but now I have the tools to handle it and join the flow instead of fight it. And this person identified the three things that impacted her most in her life with this program. And one is the positive attitude and how empowering that is. how she's learned to laugh and to find humor in situations. One of my favorite story with humor is we've been talking about this, and this one caregiver said that she had joined the program because she was getting so short-tempered and angry all the time, and she didn't like who she was. And we talked about humor, and she, thought it was sort of interesting. And she came back a couple weeks later, and she goes, "I've got the greatest story." Okay, so this is what happened. My husband said that we decided that we wanted scrambled eggs for lunch. Went to the refrigerator, pulled out the eggs, dropped the entire dozen eggs on the floor. Now, we all know what kind of a mess eggs on the floor make. She said, "I looked down and saw this mess and could feel my blood pressure rising, and I looked up at my husband's face, and I realized he was expecting me to get angry. And it really hurt that he was expecting that. And I had to really think about it. And so I looked at him, and I looked at the eggs, and I said, 'Well, you wanted them scrambled.'" And they were able to laugh about this, a situation that would have been, just really difficult a few weeks before. But this is one of the skills and the tools that she was able to bring home with her. One of the things that we stress a great deal is that taking care of yourself is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And we say that over and over every week, because it's always, "Well, no, I haven't been for my doctor's appointment." You must, that's not a luxury. It's not a luxury to go get a massage. You need that. We talk about changing perception and use of positive techniques, and I love this one. Is I used to get extremely irritated with my husband. Now I appreciate him. I've accepted, and that's that changing in the way you think about it. Not looking at him and only seeing what used to be, but looking at him and seeing who he is now. And maybe he's a lovable little boy now, not the husband that you had, but still a lovable person that you can appreciate. Feel much more relaxed, more under control. It affects self-confidence. There's another really interesting statistic about caregivers, and that is that 8% of caregivers surveyed feel that their overall health is improved by caring for a loved one. Is that interesting? To me, that is a wonderful sense of hope. And that's what we need to look for and to strive for. And I think that we can do that when we're working with the caregivers, and to give them the sense of hope that this can be something that is positive. It's not all negative. So how can we help caregivers, or how can you help yourself as a caregiver? Well, let's look at those cornerstones of the program again. We can't do too much about the facilitator skills, but looking at the nourishing of the caregiver and some of the program content of learning how to relax, learning that relaxation response. So it's a matter, one, of recognizing caregivers. So when you see someone with dementia, look at, they're not taking care of themselves. Look at who's standing next to them and say, "How are you doing? Wow, you're doing a really good job. Thank you for the work that you do. This is really hard." Recognizing that. To give them support. To offer them the resources. Let them know about something like the StressBusting program or some of these support groups that are going on about this. Encouraging them to maintain relationships with their friends, because that's very important. Help them to learn about what's going on. Send them to the Alzheimer's Association. Get them information, because these symptoms that they hear about, one of the things that we hear most from the caregivers are, "I can't believe that other people are going through this too. I thought I was all by myself." Not. We need to get them out and let them know they're not by themselves. Helping them to, again, to get help from agencies like the area agencies on aging, for example. Talk to them about relaxing. Talk to them about breathing. Get out, go for a walk for a little bit. Or even, you know, when you're really stressed up, we told, when you get that stress response, and your body needs to release that, and if you really can't do anything, run up and down some stairs or walk around the house really fast. Even any type of exercise, even if they can't get away, any type of physical exercise will release some of that, and you feel different, and you can get into that relaxation response. Simple things you can talk to them in a few minutes to let them know. Journaling, walking, and talking about how to think about looking at this. That we can't choose our destiny, but we can choose how we respond to it. It doesn't have to be with bitterness. You don't have to be a victim. You can be a winner. And especially encouraging family caregivers to take care of themselves. Ask them, what have you done for yourself today? What have you done for yourself this week? What can you do today? And go ahead and ask them those hard questions and get them to answer you. And let them know that you're interested in hearing their answer. It only takes a moment. Because we know that there are a lot of folks with Alzheimer's out there that can't take care of themselves. When the health and well-being of the caregivers are in jeopardy, that puts our folks with Alzheimer's in jeopardy. So it's up to us to make sure that we can care for them. The StressBuster program is available. This program is always free to the caregivers, and different organizations want to learn about training people to do this. They can. This is a contact for them. It's caregiverstressbusters.org. You can, and contacting Debbie Biller at WellMed will be a contact for you. I've gone over my time. Do we have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Sounds like a great program, but what's here in Victoria?
Right now, it's a matter of getting folks in Victoria that are willing to become master trainers and to get the program started. There's a lot, in Corpus Christi is a hotbed of activity. They've got a lot of master trainers there. So I'm offering the information to you, and the contacts for this. So it's up to Victoria folks to get it going. And there are conversations about it getting started here.
What kind of time frame does it take to do that, learn that program?
To become a master trainer, it takes 2.5 days of training. Okay, so it's a matter of getting with Debbie Billa and at this contact number and talking with her about getting the people to come down and do the training here in Victoria. Yes.
What do y'all do for people that maybe have limited financial resources, that, they're the primary caregiver for their spouse or someone that want to go to the program? Do y'all have...
The question is about the resources for the caregiver to take care of, for respite, basically, to be able to come to the program. And that we found has been real dependent on the groups that start the programs in their areas. For instance, in Corpus, they've got it in conjunction with the School of Nursing there, so they bring nursing students in and they provide on-site care. So lots of different ideas. The groups are being very innovative. What we do, we never provided respite care, but what we did was provide, during the initial research aspect of it, but what we did is provide a lot of resources. And for some of the caregivers, it was the first time they knew about the resources and the first time they reached out to get any type of respite in order to be able to come to the program. And it was a real victory just from that aspect. So it really depends a lot on the organization holding it. Yes, Joe?
I was just wondering who the conversation is starting with here in Victoria, so we can get in on it.
Well, Homewood is as far as the two Alzheimer's support groups that you have listed in your package, we're working with Maxine to get that started out at the beginning of next year.
I know that in San Antonio, it's through the council will go, so we should contact more of the not ACOG here, it's called, you know, the agency on aging.
The AAA.
City Partners.
Karen, did you have a question? Oh, it was about respite care, so thank you. Okay.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much.